When you decide to bring in footage into After Effects, you might want to consider rendering from your favorite application as a series of sequenced images instead of a regular QuickTime movie. Let me go ahead and show you the difference. I'm going to bring over a QuickTime movie, and as you can see, it's a self-contained piece of footage. So if I press play, this thing would actually play from beginning to end. But of course I'm not going to play this now because I think you understand that when you create a QuickTime movie or an AVI movie, you pretty much have an encapsulated file. There really is no way for you to get to the individual frames that make up this movie. Now, I also have a folder with some RPFs in it, and this simply stands for Rich Pixel Format. Now what I did was, when I was in Lightwave, I saved my movie as individual pictures, and they're all numbered, of course, in sequence. And After Effects is smart enough to realize that these belong together and that they play back in a sequential fashion. So let me explain why you might want to choose to render as pictures instead of one self-contained QuickTime or AVI file. And hopefully this will really send this message home. Whenever you render a QuickTime movie, all right, let's say you go to dinner and your movie is going to take hours to render, all right, hours and hours to render. What's going to happen is, let's say you have a lightning storm or you have a power failure. Well, guess what? Unfortunately, the entire render is now ruined. There's no way that I know of to resume and get back to that QuickTime movie. The file is corrupted. So let's say your application says, all right, it's going to take 4 hours and a half to render out this file. All right, that's fine. So 4 hours and 22 minutes into the render, lightning strikes your house and blows out your computer. So your hard drive is saved, but unfortunately your render is over. So 4.5 hours lost. However, if you render as single frames like this, it doesn't really matter, because let's say you have, 3,000 frames rendered out of 3,025. Well, as long as you have these guys all saved, because every time it renders one of them, it saves. So it's this one saved, that one saved. So let's say you're rendering and lightning hit your house and these are all ruined, right? All you have to do is go back to your application and say render from 27 on. And you can just put them back together, because After Effects is going to know what to do with that. So that's really the main benefit to doing that. Another thing, by the way, is when you finally finish your special effects work in After Effects, you're going to wind up saving it as a QuickTime movie or an AVI file pretty much anyway, because After Effects is kind of like the middle ground. Your 3D software or your video software, your camera, all of that stuff is first. Then you bring everything into After Effects, where you do your color corrections, where you add your rain, your smoke, your explosions, your lightning. And then you bring it into another application to do the video editing. So you might head over to Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro, and then you piece all those individual pieces of footage that you did in After Effects together to make your film. And you can edit it and make things longer and shorter and that kind of thing. So After Effects is the middle ground for the most part, but it's a pretty important middle ground. So let me show you how you can actually bring in those sequences. So I'm going to go to File, Import, and I can choose File. I don't have to choose multiple files. I can choose File itself, or I can right-click in my project panel, Import, File. Now as you can see, I'm already in that folder, and when I click on one of these guys, all of a sudden the options change, because After Effects is like, hey, I know what that is. It's either an RLA or an RPF. And I can say bring this in as a sequence. So I only have one selected, and I'll go ahead and hit open. And I'm going to go ahead and ignore that. And as you can see, this is what looks like one piece of footage. But look at the icon. Hopefully you guys can see that. It looks like several pieces of paper or pieces of film or stacks of paper. I'll go ahead and bring that into my composite, and I'll go ahead and scrub, and we have animation. So it really is beneficial, and I really hope you guys get yourself into the habit of rendering out single frames instead, because it's so easy to put them together in After Effects. And you know how computers are. A hard drive can crash the very same day you buy a computer. There really is no guarantee to how much you're going to get out of a hard drive. It could crash in 5 years, it can crash in 5 minutes, and you really don't want to lose so much hard work. So I highly suggest that you check the software you're using and see what image sequence type it can export, and also see whether or not After Effects can understand that application's export, and then work with those.